Okay, in this video, I'm going to walk you through some of my experience and tips and tricks, things that are working when it comes to prompting AI as a salesperson, or maybe you're a manager and you want to guide your team in how to develop these kind of prompts. And I'm going to walk you through some examples and just some of the things that I've picked up through my journey into using AI for my own roles. The key thing that is so interesting about AI is that there is no manual. It's moving so fast that there is nowhere that you can go and just download the docs and figure out how to do prompting. As each new model comes out, as people jump from ChatGPT to Claude to different models to Gemini, then they're just testing out different things. And so it really is just an experiment in learning how to use these tools. One of the things that really came home to me, I love writing. I write on my blog every day. I write a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I've written a couple of books. And as tools like ChatGPT and Claude came out, I was thinking, is this the end of writing? Is the end of the creative, the written word? And what I've learned is that absolutely not. Writing as a human is going to become even more important as we go forwards, because your ability to communicate with the machines is what's going to be a defining skill. If our children come out of schools and universities and they cannot write, or they cannot communicate what it is that they want, then they're going to have a real challenge using these kinds of tools. So as we go through some of this course, you'll see it's trial and error. That's exactly how I'm playing around with it. There are some best practices, there are some guides, but it's really about figuring out how do you communicate with these tools in order to get the best response that comes back to you. One of the things that I definitely recommend is about just using it in your daily life. Practicing with the personal things that you want. Maybe you've got, you're building out a fitness plan. Maybe you're trying to sort out your personal finances. Maybe you're trying to figure out how much savings you need in your pension so that you can, retire at a certain age. These are the kinds of use cases that it's something that's important to you, it's personal to you. And if you play around with these tools and figure out how you can bend them to your will with those tasks, you'll find actually bringing it into the workplace becomes really, really easy as well. So how do I think about working with Claude or ChatGPT and getting the best responses in a work environment? And so here specifically, I'm thinking about sales and marketing, go-to-market. How is it that we can get the best from these? And I really imagine Claude, and I'll just keep saying Claude because that's the tool that we're going to look at in a minute, rather than Claude and ChatGPT. But essentially, it's any large language model. But when I'm working with Claude, I really imagine that it is a new apprentice that is joining the company. Maybe that's an SDR that's coming to work with me. Maybe it's a new account executive, depending on the role or the task that you're going to be providing to Claude. Now, imagine that you have got this new apprentice, an actual human being that turns up in your office and it's day one. Well, of course, they've got some good, broad understanding of how the world works. Maybe they've been an SDR before or an AE before. Maybe they've worked in a technology company. But what are the things that they don't know? Well, they don't know the intricacies and nuances of your company. What would you provide to that person on day one so that they could do a good job? Well, you'd probably give them a 50-page handbook. This is our culture. This is the language that we use here. This is how our team is structured. These are some of our leadership teams and how we perform work. You would probably then give them some definitions of your processes. So here's our sales process. These are the different stages. These are the entry criteria and the exit criteria. These are the products that we sell, and maybe our pricing and the ICPs and the buyer personas that we sell into. And if you've gone through one of these onboarding processes, either in person or online, the huge volume of information that is given to you in order that you've got some context when you start engaging with actual customers. You'll be provided with different policies. That might be your health and safety policy. It might be your internet policy, social media policy. You'll be given loads of great information about your competitors with battle cards and all of this kind of stuff. And so really think when you're working with tools like Claude, how can I feed it this kind of knowledge so that when I ask it a question, it has this context? In the same way that when a new member of staff joins your company, if you start firing them questions on day one and you haven't given them the knowledge, well, you're going to get a very basic and generic answer back. So keep that idea of knowledge in your mind, and we'll come back to that. The next is about writing very clear, specific instructions. And again, think about an apprentice. Think about your new SDR or AE. Do you give them a task like write me an annual marketing strategy? Or what are they going to do with that? They haven't got the context. You're not exactly telling them exactly what it is that you want. So when you're thinking about the prompts that you are creating for Claude, you want to provide a very clear description of that task. This is what I'm asking you to do. This is why I need it. This is the format that I want it in. And tell them exactly what it is that you want in such a way that if you were to give that prompt to another human being, or ideally the kind of person that you would normally get to do this task, would they know what to do? Very often, because we're so used to just scrambling in a few keywords and short comments into a Google search, we've forgotten the ability to actually write down a very clear set of instructions. So take some time, slow down, think about what you want to write. One way of doing that is actually to write some of these prompts in a different system. Maybe that's your Google Docs, maybe it's in Office 365, to actually write it down. And then you can put it into the platform. And sometimes that's a good way of making you think instead of I'm just here in a quick chat interface. So would another human understand it? And then the other part about these clear instructions is often in our role, we think of the happy path. Well, this is exactly how this process works every time. But we know the reality is that isn't the case. We're talking about deal qualification here. Well, maybe some opportunities have got this information and some haven't. Maybe some have got a partner and some haven't. Maybe some we've got specific requirements and some haven't. So as you're thinking about writing these prompts, you want to think through some of those edge cases so that the tool's got the capacity and the information to be able to deal with them when it encounters them. The next concept, if you were dealing with a human apprentice, would be to break tasks down. I used the example a minute ago of give me an annual marketing strategy. Well, there's a lot in that. What is it that you want me to do? Well, first, I want you to go and define the KPIs and the metrics that we need to have in our marketing strategy. Next, I want you to define how we're going to architect our team, who's going to be in that team and what roles are they going to have. Thirdly, I want you to define what our field marketing strategy is going to be. This is how you'd have a human conversation. In the world of AI, it's what we call chain of thought. Do this, then do that, and then do that. And it's very helpful to the models to be actually guided through thinking about these different steps, because once they've thought about the first bit, then they've got some input that goes into the second bit. In fact, just as I'm recording this, just a week ago, OpenAI launched a new reasoning model called O1, which has a lot of this chain of thought built into it. And so more and more of the models will be able to follow this process in future, but it currently is very helpful to break that task down into its individual components and guide them through. Another sort of variant of that is that in your prompt is to ask Claude to guide you through what its thinking process is before it provides your answer. So if, for example, you're asking it about qualifying a deal in or out, as well as saying, yeah, I'd qualify this in or I'd qualify it out, a little bit of asking about, tell me why you're thinking about that and what's the thought process you've gone through. And you may well find some things in there that make you change your prompt because you hadn't provided the right information. I always add this into most of my prompts, especially when there's a lot involved in that prompt, which is there anything in this that you don't understand? So I'll often say, this is a complex task, there's a lot involved. Please let me know if there's anything that you don't understand, or if there's any other information that you might need that would help you to come up with your best answer. And you'll often get a response back saying, that's great, but could you first clarify for me, is this an existing customer or a new prospect? And this additional information helps Claude with its reasoning. The next example, well, I say example, but the next best practice, again, thinking about a new apprentice, a new SDR, thinking about a new AE that's starting. How would you guide them in doing a great job? Well, you give them examples. This is what good looks like. In a sales example, you might give them some call recordings from Gong of what a good meeting looks like. You might give them an amazing pitch deck that someone else has done. And you'll also share a little bit of, this is what bad looks like. Maybe not an example from a colleague, but you might say, if you're asking these questions, they're far too situational and they're not actually adding value to the customer. Or here's a very bad slide, which has just got lots of words on it and not many graphics. You might also provide them with some examples. If the customer says this, then you should say that. If the customer says that they've got this integration or they've got this existing supplier, then you'd do that. And so providing these kinds of things in your prompts is very, very helpful. So for any prompt, I would definitely recommend that you've got 2 or 3 examples. If you're asking them to help you craft an email, you're asking it to help you craft a talk track, well, guide them through what good looks like and what bad looks like. So there are some of the key tips for about humanizing your AI. So give it knowledge, ramping, onboarding, just like you would a human. Give it clear instructions and make sure that when you read that back or you give it to another human being, they would know exactly what to do. Break things down with this chain of thought. First do this, then I want you to do that, then I want you to do that. And provide it with some examples. This is what good looks like. This is what bad looks like. If the customer says this, then do that. And that will really make sure that you get a much more accurate response and that it's what you want from the tool. And the last, we've got a couple of other ones here. Sorry, I skipped over those. So give them an out. So this is where the apprentice analogy is actually quite strong. An apprentice, just like an excited puppy, is very eager to please. I'm sure you've had this. You're onboarding someone new, you ask them some questions, and they're too scared to say, I don't know. So they'll either just sort of make something up or give you an answer, a very vague answer to hope that you're happy. But an AI is just like that as well. It works for you. It feels like it works for you. It wants to tell you what it knows. And this is where some of the hallucinations can come in, just like that apprentice telling you an answer just to hope that they've given you what you need. So give your tool an out. If you aren't sure, ask me more questions. Is there any information that you would need to know to help you give an answer? If this example doesn't follow any of the examples I've provided in the knowledge, then let me know. So give it permission to tell you that it's not sure. And then as you start getting responses back from your AI tool, now is when you can start providing feedback. And if you imagine you're using a search engine and you type something in and you get the wrong site or you get directed in the wrong direction, you can't really give a lot of feedback. You can't really say that wasn't the site that I wanted and can you go back in a different direction? You end up just starting again. But with tools like Claude, this is exactly what you can do. and thinking again about how you would engage with a new starter, with an apprentice. You would not just shut them down or say, oh, that was rubbish, and walk off in a different direction. You'd be a great coach, not a bad boss. You'd say, thank you very much for that. There was this one bit here that wasn't quite what I was looking for. So can you talk me through what you were thinking and how you got to that specific thing? What you're going to find there is a little bit about how the AI model has got to that reasoning. And you can then use that to either update your prompts or just ask them, can you redo that or clarify it in that specific example? And you'll learn a ton about how to write great prompts through providing that careful and considerate feedback and coaching the AI into how you can be a better communicator. So there are the sort of key best practices about treating AI like a human that's just joined your team. So you might think, well, crikey, there is a lot there. Like, I'm going to use all of that every single time I write a prompt. Well, I'm never going to actually get to do any work. So here's a few more generic prompting skills tools that might help you there. So the first is about using Claude Projects, or in ChatGPT, using GPTs. I'm actually just going to show you Claude Projects here, but GPTs in OpenAI are a similar concept. The idea is about using them for a repetitive task. So in Claude, you can go to projects, you can create a new project. And once you've created that project, it'll look something like this. So this is a project that I've created for opportunity qualification. And as I've said in the description, you're going to help me to qualify deals in and out of my pipeline by leading me through a qualification session as if you were my sales manager. So that is the job here. Here, I've been able to provide some specific instructions for the project. You're going to act as my sales manager, guiding me through the process of qualifying an opportunity in my pipeline. In your knowledge, you've got a set of guidelines to follow. Treat this like a human-to-human conversation, so be sure to ask me questions in ones and twos instead of long lists of questions that make it hard for me to answer. Your goal as a coach is to get me to do the talking and to guide myself to the right decision. And so here we've basically told Claude, this is what we want you to do. And in that, I mentioned I provided some instructions. So let me just show you a little bit about what these are. So I talked earlier about creating prompts outside of the AI tool, where it's easier to think and to be creative and then transfer that back in. And that's exactly what I've done here. So let me guide you through this document. So one of the first things is, when you're loading up these kind of prompts, there is a lot of content and you want to help guide the AI tool in the right direction. And one of the ways you can do that is by marking up your text. There's different ways. You can use XML tags, but here I'm just using one hashtag to show the title of the document, two hashtags to show a heading one. If I scroll down here, we've got three hashtags to show heading two, and so on. And it just helps the tool as it's ingesting all this information to understand how to break things up and to segment it. Now, this is my kind of mega prompt that I'm using at the moment for opportunity qualification. So a bit of an introduction to the AI. These instructions are going to guide Claude in role playing with B2B sellers and so on. We want the exercise to take about 10 minutes to complete. So you'll not be asking all of the questions, but use your judgment to identify the best questions to ask that will help the seller to decide if they should qualify this deal in or out. Acting as a sales manager, you're trying to guide the salesperson's thinking and have them consider the information that they don't have about the deal but need to find out. Where the salesperson says they aren't sure, encourage them that this is a useful exercise to uncover these gaps and to take a note of what they need to find out. So the purpose of this tool is not an interrogation. It's really to help a seller to think through what they know and what they don't know. Now let's provide a bit of context here. Now, I don't work for DocuSign, but this is just the example here. Here's where we might provide a little bit of that onboarding that we talked about. I work for DocuSign. We provide e-signature and contract lifecycle management services to companies looking to digitize and automate their agreement processes. Here, you might add information about the particular modules. You might add information about your competitors. You might add information about your pricing. What is the information that you would want a sales manager and a salesperson to know about your context that is going to help them as you go through this deal qualification process? Next up, we've got a bit about the qualification guidelines. So, what is it that we want the tool to follow? And here I've just put in MEDDPICC as an example. You may have for your company some specific stages, gates, entrance criteria, exit criteria. As much as you can provide is going to help the tool to guide you in your own context. And now we get into the qualification process proper. So begin by asking the seller the following questions in turn. Please ask one by one instead of asking multiple questions at once. So which account are you selling into? Who's the main contact at this account? Do you have any documents relating to their request that would help our discussion? And then once you've answered those questions, then after gathering the initial information, probe deeper with questions like this. Again, treat this like a conversation and ask your questions one by one to give the user the chance to respond and for you to use their answer to inform which question you ask next. So this goes back to the chain of thought that we talked about and the reasoning. There's no point just asking all of these and it being an interrogation as we start providing the tool with more information about, are they an existing customer? What products do they want? Do they have an incumbent? As we go through this, the system's going to learn more and more, and that's going to guide the types of questions that it asks later on. So in here, these would actually be, you'd build these with your sales leadership around, what are the actual questions? Or you may already have a deal qualification matrix based on MEDDPICC or something like that. But in here, I've got some account questions. Do we have a unique perspective? Are they an existing customer? Some problem and need questions. Where did it come from? What problem have they got? Have there any metrics? How's it going to affect their financial statements? Have they got a compelling event that's driving the timeline? A bit about the buying group. Do we have a champion? Who else are we speaking with? Do we have access to the economic buyer? Do we know what else is competing for that budget and so on? Competitor questions. What are they doing today? Why wouldn't they stick with it? Who are our competitors in the deal? And you can start to see this is exactly the meeting that a manager should be having with one of their sellers around a deal. It's just that you're having it with the tool instead. Buying process questions. What's the sales cycle? Any red flags? What future upsell or expansion might we have? What unique value have we got that can set us apart from our competitors? Budget. And then maybe some other questions. What additional resources are required to win this deal? Is it worth it? And these are questions that I always love asking of a seller themselves. How confident are you that we can win this deal? That's not about what I want to hear. It's not about what you want to put in the system for your forecast, but how confident are you that you can win, that we can win this deal? And then the killer one for me as an empathetic salesperson, if you were the customer, would you buy our product? If you can't say yes, then that is we should be thinking about qualifying this out. There's no point selling to someone if we wouldn't buy it in their situation. Now we get into a bit more about how is the tool going to analyze these responses. So as the seller responds, analyze the information to determine how important each factor is to whether we qualify the opportunity in or out. So do we have a named champion? Well, that's important. And whether we have the information or a suitable solution for that requirement. So having a named champion is important, and we don't have one. Therefore, that's a big negative. So some examples of important things: that we've got a senior decision maker that's in contact with us. We've defined the requirements. We've got defined requirements. We have a trusted partner in place at the customer that already works with us. Maybe they're an existing customer. So those are things that would be important if we had them. And some examples of not important things. Well, whether the buttons are blue or yellow in the application, that's not important. Some of the non-functional requirements, not necessarily that important. The paper process, well, that's important later on in the deal cycle, but right now we're just qualifying an opportunity. We don't need to know how they sign things. Not knowing the competition, again, we'll find this out later on. It's not a deal breaker if we don't know that now. And then the final part of this prompt for Claude is that we want them to create a qualification canvas. And let me just get you an example of that. In fact, I'll show you in a minute. But the qualification canvas is a diagram. It's a matrix, and on it we're going to lay out the factors that are important in whether we qualify this deal in. And here I'm just explaining. I want a page layout with a canvas. It needs to have the title of the account on it. It's got a vertical axis that's going to show this. It's got a horizontal axis that's going to show that. And then I want you to divide the canvas into 4 quadrants and plot all these key factors onto it. And then finishing up, I want you to provide some recommendations and ultimately a conclusion. So summarize what you find on the qualification canvas, highlight the strongest reasons that we should pursue or drop the deal, suggest what else we should do to emphasize our strengths, recommend whether we pursue it, and then outline some next steps to further qualify the deal. Wow, that is a hell of a prompt. There is a lot of information in there, but that is what is loaded in here. Qualification guidelines. It's all written in here, and it is easy for the tool to understand exactly how it's going to use it. In here, I've also created a blank template. You can't see it here, but it's pulled out all of the text of what that looks like. And then I've also provided it with some examples of this is what a qualify in looks like, and this is what a qualify out looks like. And I just provided that as a PDF image. So now let's go through the process and see what we come up with. Hi, please can you help me to qualify an opportunity I'm working on? I'm selling into BP, the global energy company. I'm selling into BP, the global energy company. I'm speaking with Emily, who is the head of learning and development in their UK headquarters. The lead came inbound. It was an email from Emily, and she provided me with a set of requirements, which I can provide to you if you'd like. Yes, I will upload the requirements now. And let me just grab that. And you can see there how quickly, just by providing the requirements document, it is so much easier to do that than trying to just retype what you have received. I should add at this point that the document that I uploaded was actually created by Claude and is completely hypothetical. So this isn't actually a real BP RFP for e-signature. And what you can see here is that the tool is now going to continue to work through that qualification process. But just to shortcut that and give us a first view of this canvas, before we get into any more detail, could you create your first draft of the qualification canvas, and we can determine what gaps we have? And so now Claude is writing the code based on our instructions, and let's see what we get out of it. Okay, here we go. This is what I love about this. This is what I love. So based on the examples that we've provided, we've got the two axes. Left to right is the importance, or I should say top to bottom that's going is the importance, and then our capability on that. And what you can see is reasons to qualify in. We're dealing with a senior contact, Emily, and we've got some defined requirements, and it was an inbound lead. And on the left, reasons why we might want to validate or potentially qualify out. Well, we don't know what integration capability they need. She's from learning and development, but we don't know what the integration is going to need. We don't have any knowledge yet about how global this requirement is going to be, and we don't know who the competition is. And so these are things that we might need to go and figure out. Now, as we wrap up this, there is zero code in what has created this canvas. Everything that's created that canvas was in that Google Doc that I showed you. Just by describing what I wanted, this is what Claude has created. Now, you could use exactly this prompt. Obviously, you're going to tweak it with your products, your services, and you can use this to start guiding your own discussions, either with your manager if you're a seller, or with your team if you're a sales manager. So I hope that, let me just go back and just double check before we wrap up. I've got a few more things, I was getting a bit excited there, having seen the canvas. So back to prompting skills. So we looked at Claude Projects or GPTs. So this is where you use these tools for repetitive tasks. So as we saw in here with the project, all of the repetitive stuff is going in here. And so you can just qualify opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, but without having to write that prompt again and again and again. And in a sales environment, I'll do this in some other videos, but this is for opportunity qualification. But I've got one for meeting preparation. I've got one for agenda building. I've got one for negotiation. I've got one for close planning. You think about the repetitive task, exactly how you would train or coach a new AE or a new SDR. And you're going to find these tools are just accelerating and improving the quality of your work, especially if you're a new starter or you've got new starters on your team. Grammar and spelling. Do I need to do all of the, the spell check? The reality is that these tools are so good that the model will understand if you've got bad spelling. It's been trained on a lot of data that's got bad spelling in, so that's not the problem. For me, as someone that loves writing, writes a lot, I believe it's important to have some pride in what you're writing. If you are sloppy about your spelling and your grammar, then I'm pretty sure that the content that you're actually writing is probably going to be a bit sloppy and poor. And therefore, the importance and the accuracy of what you're asking the tool to do is not going to be as good. So when I see someone that has written something and there's no grammar issues, there's no spelling, it's formatted correctly, I know they've read that 3, 4, 5 times as they've got it to that point. And that means that they've had some time to think and to read and to digest. Actually, this makes sense, and this is what I want. So think of that tip of, do I write the mega prompt or the prompt in another document, get it nice before I move it across, rather than thinking of a chat window, how we might be WhatsApping someone with lots of spelling errors and shortcuts. We touched on the breaking up your information in the prompt that we looked at. So 1 hashtag for the title, 2 for headings, 3 for a subheading, 4 for an even subheading, and keep going on. And then the final bit, I've really tried in this to avoid any specific hacks. You might hear someone say, if you type this at the start, or if you write it in this format, or if you write that at the end, then you're going to get a better response. And what you're finding at the moment with the pace of the rollout of these new models is that they're just getting so good that any hack that you've got is typically rolled into a new model, or it just understands how to do that. So for me, it all goes back to treating these models as a co-worker. Imagine that a new member of staff joined the team as the person that you want to do this work, how would you communicate to them? Don't worry about hacks. I want you to imagine that you're an SDR. Just tell them what you want, break it down, and be as clear as you can about the task. So that brings us to the end of the AI sales prompting guide. I hope that has inspired you and that you can start playing around with these tools and go beyond just the basic, tell me 10 things that are important about this account, or draft me an email for this specific opportunity. Actually use it as a co-worker. Imagine that you've got an executive assistant that's actually going to help you to do your job. Really invest the time in building out these more detailed prompts. And I'd love to hear on the channel or on my email about how you've got on.